Welcome to the Awakened Heart Podcast. I'm your host, Nancy Walters. Get ready to create magic and miracles as you lean into your heart's desires. I believe not only does the heart want what it wants, but it knows. This show is a weekly deep dive into what it means to live from an awakened heart. I'll be sharing inspiring stories and real conversations with people just like you, who have turned the ordinary into the extraordinary. My mission is to show you how you too can be connected and heart-centered in every area of your life. Your journey to aligning with more love, more joy, and your wildest dreams come true starts now. Hello and welcome back, my friends, to another episode of the Awakened Heart Podcast. Today's guest, Anika Pavel, has a story that is as fascinating as it is timely. Born in communist Czechoslovakia, Anika grew up under an authoritarian regime where speech was censored, the government controlled every aspect of life, and fear was a daily reality. After the Iron Curtain fell, she escaped to the West, embracing the freedom and opportunities she had once only dreamed of. At the time of this recording, the U.S. was facing its own battles against censorship and ideological control under the Biden-Harris administration. DEI policies infiltrated every institution, radical gender ideology attempted to rewrite reality, and free speech was threatened in ways that mirrored the tactics of totalitarian regimes. But now, with the new administration returning to common sense and prioritizing America's foundational values, I feel a renewed sense of hope that we are shifting back towards truth and freedom. Anika's journey took her from a repressive regime to an international career as a model, actress, and now a brilliant author. She has appeared in fashion campaigns across the world, starred in films including James Bond, and has used her experience to write Encounter with the Future, a thought-provoking collection of essays that explore history, politics, and human resilience. In our conversation, we dive deep into the parallels between the world she left behind and what we witnessed in recent years. She shares her perspective on the dangers of mass compliance, the importance of questioning mainstream narratives, and why personal freedom must always be defended. This is an episode that will make you think, challenge your perspective, and hopefully inspire you to stay vigilant in protecting what matters most. You will not want to miss this powerful discussion. And without further ado, here is today's guest, Anika Pavel. Hi, Anika. Welcome to the Awakened Heart Podcast.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's so good. Glad to finally connect with you. And we were supposed to actually record a couple weeks ago, and somehow we missed each other. But you know what? Things happen the way they're supposed to. And I'm so glad we got another chance to reconnect. And here you are in front of me. And I'm really, you have such a amazing story. And this is going to be a really great conversation about, we're going to talk about the complexities of the immigrant experience, which like going from Czechoslovakia and then your family, you moved and then didn't you move to, where did you guys move to? I thought I saw Portland and then.
Well, no, I have been a bit of a gypsy. Yes, I started in London. I actually studied in Ipswich. Then I lived in London for 13 years. And then I moved to Hong Kong. I lived there for 4.5 years. Then I moved to Boston for 1 year.
Wow.
Then I moved to Monte Carlo for 1 year. And then I kind of put my roots down in New Jersey. And then I moved to New York City. And now I have moved to Cape Cod, Massachusetts, since I have married a Bostonian. So.
Oh, okay. So you moved there Cape Cod is beautiful. It looks like another little slice of heaven, Cape Cod. And you're like just definitely the multinational woman, the cosmopolitan woman. And speaking of that, you were a one-time James Bond girl. And tell my audience which James Bond girl you were.
Well, it was A Spy Who Loved Me with Roger Moore. And it was a lot of fun. At the time, I was working as a model and just breaking into acting. I had several TV shows and minuscule parts in the different movies. And so, yeah, I was selected as one of the 4 girls for the movie. And we did a lot of promoting of the of the James Bond is an amazing organization that is run very well. And in addition to the part, which was quite small, but it is important to promote the movie. And so we were selected to promote the movie a lot. And so I got to know Roger Moore quite well, who was an amazing gentleman. And I have worked with him on another movie. And I actually met him in New York City when on a 50th anniversary of the James Bond. And he was very nice, very kind. He remembered the day we worked together at Pinewood Studio. And what a gentleman. It's totally missed by everybody. You know, true James Bond, he's a real gentleman.
Yes. And when I think of James Bond, I always think of Roger Moore because that's, I grew up in the 70s and that was the James Bond at the time. And I always remember Moonraker and all the beautiful James Bond models. And that must have kind of launched your modeling career into the stratosphere because, it's James Bond is an, iconic personality. And you were one of the James Bond girl. How did your family receive that? How did everything, your friends, you must have just been...
You have to remember that in Czechoslovakia, they really didn't get to see James Bond movies.
Yes, that's
right. And in fact, I by that time, I was, in fact, fairly well established as a model. I came to England as an au pair. And then when the Soviet Union invaded Czechoslovakia, I got stuck and then struggled for a little while. And then I won a competition to be a model by Daily Mail and got a training for modeling. And we did a fashion show, which was always at Olympia in London during Christmas time. And then, as you probably know, it's never overnight success. And so it took a long time of seeing casting agents and getting an agent and, getting my book together and, starting with a small magazine, building into bigger magazines and into TV commercials and getting on the cover of the magazines. And little by little, I started to break into acting. And then I guess the James Bond was a cherry on a cake.
The cherry on top.
Yes. So that was a huge break for me, and it was wonderful and something I'm very proud of.
Your journey from Czechoslovakia under the Iron Curtain to becoming an international model and actress is absolutely remarkable. How did your early experiences shape your resilience and determination to succeed in such diverse fields? Because now you're an author, and you said that you're authoring another book we'll go into at the end of the podcast, but your new book, Encounter with the Future. So how did your early experiences help you succeed in modeling, and then you're an author and whatever else, au pair and whatever else you
Well, it was kind of forced upon me. I was always going to be a writer. That was my dream. And I wanted to be a journalist, and which was one of the reasons why I wanted to come to London, to England, to learn to speak English, because I felt it would give me more of openings. But then, Soviet Union invaded Czechoslovakia, and it was the end of the freedom that, Alexander Dubček was trying to install, the socialism with a human face, which lasted 6 months. And after that, it was nothing but a bloody revenge. And so I had to go through a lot of difficult times and having to take care of body and having to take care of my family. But when you are 18 and you are faced with inevitable, there was no going back. Retreat was not possible. And so I had to just go put my right foot in front of a left one and go forward. And so that's what I did. And, I was very lucky to win that competition. And but still, it didn't mean that I didn't. At night, I was working as a waitress, and at times I was working on the weekends as a cashier at shops, and just trying to make ends meet because there was no one I could rely on, and my family was relying partly on me. My mother was suffering with cancer, and I had to send her medication that Czechoslovakia did not have, and so I guess it was what drove me. I had to succeed. I had no other choice. I guess I had a use on my side. When you are young, you don't look at failing. And in my case, I felt I was given such a amazing golden opportunity to be able to leave the country and the oppression of that regime that I wasn't going to squander it and waste it by feeling sorry for myself. I was going to just do what needed to be done, and I did. But I don't deny I had some luck. I certainly helped it. I won that competition, and getting some TV commercials which made me more recognizable and put me in front of agents that were casting for various movies, and also getting me on a book cover, magazine covers. So, all of that has helped me, but I didn't have a luxury to be anything but working hard because I knew I was alone, and there was people depending on me. Until I got married, I really was going it alone, and then I had a good partner. I was lucky, and life was much easier.
Good partner.
And then when I got much older, I went back to my first love, writing. So I went to school and studied to write.
Speaking of that, in your book, Encounter with the Future, you explore personal and political histories. How did the political climate of your upbringing influence your worldview and your later work in fashion, acting, and writing?
Well, I knew that I did not like the oppression. I wanted to value the freedom of speech, freedom of movement that I had. And so if you ask me how I feel about the Russians invaded Ukraine, very, very strongly. And I know what it's like. I very much associate myself with the suffering. And so it influenced me to always move forward. And I have always drawn on that experience when I needed to look sad or happy. And it really what formed me was that experience, and to know how we couldn't listen to the music we wanted to listen to. We couldn't wear what we wanted to wear. We couldn't speak freely. People whispered. There were jokes that were whispered, all anti-communist jokes. And so for me, London in early 70s was like heaven. There was freedom. There were all these pop stars, and something that we couldn't even get in a photographs because our magazines wouldn't feature Beatles. And so suddenly I could send home all these pictures, all these magazines. And so I appreciated that. And so I have always was very much aware how lucky I was. So complaining was not really something that I have leaned on. I always moved forward and felt I'm lucky, very, very lucky.
So you are outliving this life in London. So you saw a lot of your family members and people that you knew back in Czechoslovakia, which is under the Iron Curtain. You didn't even get to see, the vicarious life that you lived because it's being censored in Czechoslovakia. And, this is a time as well when that wall was still up, West Berlin too. And there was the KGB. And I've only seen movies on a James Bond. They kind of play out a lot of what's
Right.
what that was like. Do you see any parallels to what is going on the world stage right now? A lot of people that have experienced oppression or censorship or maybe communist or socialist or fascist regimes, there's a lot going on in our own country that people are recognizing right now. We're dangerously becoming close to, we're seeing censorship in speech, we're seeing gaslighting in the media, we're seeing freedoms taken away. Medical intervention was forced on so many people and they were turning people against each other. Do you see a parallel to what you went through under the Iron Curtain happening here right now? I know some people seem oblivious to it, but to others, it's very obvious what is happening. And we've had people warning about like being very careful, like, because it seems like they want the government to be the all-seeing, like, oh, hail the mighty God, kind of. Do you see any parallels to what is you went through to what is going on now? It's not even just in our country. It seems like a lot of European countries and others are facing the same thing.
Yeah, I think that unfortunately people forget. They forget very quickly. And the authoritarian people who are coming up and getting more and more power, it's because people forget what it was like. They did not live under oppression. When you couldn't speak you couldn't watch what you wanted to watch. You could not do what you wanted to do. You couldn't move. You couldn't wear what you wanted to do. And people quickly forget. There is always, I always felt that nothing's ever 100%. And it's just like how Hitler got into a power because he was able to build roads and give people the jobs. And then suddenly people don't listen to the detail. And as you said, it's happening everywhere. And people are turning back and like young people forget what it was like. And because they have it now. And I had a member of my family visiting, the entire family came to visit me. And they felt like it's leaning towards more of that authoritarian regime. And I said, you don't understand. You are here as a family. That would not have happened 50 years ago. You could have been able to. My mother could visit, but not my father. My brothers couldn't visit at the same time as my parents could visit. When I got married, only one of my parents was allowed to come. The other one had to stay behind. The people quickly forget what it was like. And I think I wish people will remember that freedom is very precious. And we should value that above anything else. Everything else is a detail. But if you don't have a freedom, you basically have nothing. And I think that's what sometimes people forget. That's what the Ukraine is fighting for. That's what a lot of people are fighting for. It's a mess out there.
Yeah. So they would only allow one family member to come at a time because they were afraid if the whole family went over that they wouldn't be coming back.
Right.
So, yeah. And what we see now, like I find that freedom is so precious. And that's always been my Achilles heel in my whole lifetime. Like, don't take my freedom and do not tell me what to do. And in the last couple of years, I've seen that play out so much. And I was like, I see everything. I'm like, what the hell's going on? And it seems like the younger generation that has had it so easy, like the ones that are in college now, they're protesting, it feels like for the wrong thing, like they're supporting actually terrorist organizations that are oppressing women, like and terrorizing their citizens. And I don't think they quite understand what they have here in this country, burning our flag, the red, white, and blue. Like if America falls, the rest of the world falls. They can't see another country that's like free like we are if they're oppressing the rest of the world. So I think it's just so important for younger generations, especially, to listen to someone like you or the older generation that might have seen what was happening out there or went through a lot of the same things. I don't know. I think there's a lot of indoctrination happening at these schools, but we live in the greatest, I think, country in the world, and let's keep it that way because
Yes.
you have firsthand experience of it, and you escaped it, and you created a successful life for yourself. And as an immigrant, you've navigated numerous transitions, geographical, cultural, and professional. What were some of the most significant challenges you faced during these transitions, and how did you overcome them?
What was the most difficult? I think the most difficult transition for me was when when I realized that the door back was closed, because I have not actually left Czechoslovakia with the thought of never going back. And it was the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia that closed that door. And that was a difficult challenge. And when then Soviet Union further closed the border and ordered everybody who was living abroad come back, because when Soviet Union invaded Czechoslovakia, England said every Czechoslovakian citizen who was in England at the time was allowed to stay, got automatic permit to stay, and all those people could also get a work permit, because it makes sense. If you're letting people stay, you might as well let them work. Otherwise, how are they going to support themselves, right? And so later on, the Dubček tried to, it was a wheel that moved a little slowly. The door didn't shut like this from one day to another. So it took a year and a half before they ordered everyone to come back. And that's when I was put in front of the most difficult situation in my life, because I had to make a decision. Do I sacrifice myself or do I sacrifice my family?
Mm.
And that was really hard to do.
Yeah, the immigration experience, it often involves a sense of loss and reinvention, which you had to reinvent yourself. How did you maintain a connection to your roots while also embracing new cultures and identities in your journey?
I think that learning was always something that was ingrained in me. My mother loved traveling, and ever since I was a little girl, she would give me every birthday, she would give me a book, and it was always a book about traveling. She believed in book and in traveling, because her famous words were always, traveling is a university of life, because you learn from others, you learn about others, you learn to accept others, and you learn to look at yourself in a different way. And so for me, that was the most important thing, to be able to travel and learn from other people. I think that's very important for all of us to be able to do. I think it is often the misconceptions that people have a hard time with. People look at me, people ask me some stupid questions about what life in Czechoslovakia was like, and when I came out. And but I thought, of course they don't know, because the door is closed. They cannot go in there. They don't know. So later I learned to appreciate they ask so that they do know. And I learned the saying, again, my parents used to say, the only stupid question is the one you never asked. And it's true. We have to learn about each other. The more we know, the better we can make an educated choice on everything in our life, all around our life.
I want to go into the history just for the audience members that don't really know what happened. Russia invaded Czechoslovakia. How long were they in Czechoslovakia? And I see here that there's a bloody end to the Prague Spring.
But so when the world was divided between East and West, and after the Second World War, NATO was created, and then the Soviet Union, basically the big shots decided who was going to be under whose rule. So Soviet Union and Czechoslovakia, we were under the Soviet Union rule, and there was a Warsaw Pact, which was the counteraction of the NATO. And so life became, Winston Churchill said, the Iron Curtain descended. And people lived a very different lives. We did not learn too much, or we had no choice. And so they kept a really strong yoke on the people. We were given information, wrong information. The newspapers gave, fed us all sorts of misinformation about the most important thing is that the world was divided between East and West at the time. And so in the West, everything was bad. In the East, everything was good. Except those of us who lived in the East, we knew different. When there was some good communists, there were people who were coming up and said, wait a minute, this could be good, but it needs to be changed, needs to be tuned, which was Alexander Dubček. And he was the one who coined the phrase, socialism with a human face. And so he installed freedom of speech, freedom of press, and freedom to travel. And the Soviet Union did not like that one iota. And so I was in London when Soviet Union pretty much loaded their gigantic planes with tanks, and they basically landed. Next morning, everybody woke up in Prague and there were tanks on the streets. And the people tried to fight. They abducted Dubček and took him to Moscow. And young people, of course, were willing to fight. But we had a very sensible older president who realized it would be a bloodbath. And so he convinced the leaders in Soviet Union to let Dubček come back and make the country somewhat normal. And that's why the yoke didn't close and the door, the borders didn't close for another year and a half. And so little by little, they started to take freedom of speech, the freedom of travel, and everything went back as it was. How long did the fighting, the bloodbath, wasn't long. That was maybe 1 week, young people. And then when Dubček came, he told everybody, go back to work. We will get disorganized. And people trusted him and believed him. But ultimately, they got rid of him. And, that was it. And it took a very long time. It wasn't until 1989 in October that Czechoslovakia became again free country. It's what they called, and this time there was just a peaceful revolution. They called it a Velvet Revolution. That Czechoslovakia turned from communism to a democratic country. And so I wish the world will be able to make the changes in government peacefully like Czechoslovakia did. Of course, it's easier to do when you have a small country that is only 13 million people. It's harder to do when you're talking about large countries.
So Czechoslovakia's Iron Curtain came down at the same time the wall came down? Was it the same time? Was it tied together?
A little bit earlier.
Okay.
But it was roughly about the same time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like far. It was really rolling on.
Do you think America, free, our founders, like that Declaration of Independence, no other country really has that. And that's really what's protected us all these years. And there's people that want to dismantle that right now. We're like this experiment, like 250 years of freedom. You could come to this country, you could really work hard, become anything you wanted to be, practice whatever religion you wanted to. We had some horrible episodes in the past with slavery and then the Japanese going into war camps and even like immigrants coming over, like the Italians were against the Irish and all that. There was a lot of infighting in there, but we always had our freedoms. And really, you can work hard enough and become whatever you want to become. And you can marry whoever you want to become. You talk about whatever you want to talk about. And slowly, those are trying to be stripped away from it. They keep talking about the American experiment. We're at a danger of losing it. Luckily, we don't listen to what just the mainstream news is propagating, because a lot of it is like, they're propagating whatever the administration or whoever's in charge is telling them. They're being paid by big tech and big pharma, all that. But luckily, we have all these independent media. We have all these, can't shut down the social media, though they're trying to, but people have a way because of the internet, we can find out what's actually happening. So there's not one narrative that's hypnotizing the masses. Now, you didn't have social media at the time that Czechoslovakia was under the Iron Curtain and all that, but people would speak, right now people write memes and they, you guys would whisper about things, but we make memes light over serious situations. Do you think that they would have gained as much power as they did back then if they had what we have now as far as the internet and social media? I mean, we're seeing it happening even though we do have it, but what do you think about?
Well, I do think that the social media is a two-edged sword.
Absolutely.
It is very hard to know what is true and what isn't true.
Mm-hmm.
And even when you Google things, even if you read things with a grain of salt, it's not always easy to know what is true and what isn't true. And also, English is a wonderful language, as any writer will tell you. You can say the same thing in a two very different ways, and both will be true, but it's said to be understood in a different way. And I think that has been perfected now into such a degree that it's very hard for people to know what's what. And I think that is the hardest thing to do. It's if you are not if you don't have a good background and solid knowledge of what is what, it's very easy to get swayed one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, I think that's a danger. It's a wonder and a danger of social media because, as my father used to be, okay, it's you read this and you hear this, now be a Solomon. Which is it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we are facing a lot. And not just here. It's in England, it's in Europe, it's everywhere. It's in Czechoslovakia. I have conversation with my family there. Not everybody thinks the way I do. And but I'm very optimistic because I really feel that as a humans, we have one thing in advantage over animals. We have language, we can communicate. And ultimately, we'll duke it out, we'll talk it out. And also, time can be a good healer, and time can also reveal what's true and what is not true. It's like a good wine. If you have a good wine, age it gets better. If the wine is no good, check it out.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. And we're seeing right now in our country, as well as a lot of European countries, there's overabundance of immigration happening illegally. And it's become such a political and touchy subject, which it shouldn't be. I mean, there's so many people that come over here legally, and there's always been some illegal immigration coming over at the amount that we're seeing now. I feel that there's a political reason why they're doing this, trying to erase culture, it's just become overrun. It's become such a political issue. My sister came from Vietnam. We adopted her after the fall of Saigon. And she had to come, she came over, she was like 3 years old. And then, of course, she went through when she was old enough, she learned about our country, had to go through the naturalization process, which I'm sure you had to as well. And there's a way to, come into country, but we're seeing people that are coming and breaking asylum laws and coming to this country and really not, and they're getting all these handouts. And I don't know, we're seeing a lot of influx. It's not sustainable. And what do you see about the immigration that's happening? Because I know under the last administration, I think there was 2.5 million that came over. Right now, there's like about 12 million that have come over. And then there's the gotaways. See that people have different viewpoints on it, but it feels like we're being destroyed from within. They're getting shipped all over the country. I don't know. What are your views on it? What do you see happening here? I mean, there's a legal process.
I have to be honest with you. I don't have enough information to make a judgment. And I think that somebody with my accent to pass judgment on immigration, it's kind of a reach. It's a little bit of an oxymoron. So I always say proof is in the pudding.
Well, we're a country full of immigrants, and that's what makes our country so amazing is we're a melting pot, and we've always welcomed people from all over the world into our country. But now there's it just unprecedented, like, oh, here's the border, walk right through. But yeah, I totally understand that. So let's get back to your book right now. Your book touches on universal themes of perseverance and transformation. What advice would you give to others who are navigating their own transitions in life, especially in the face of adversity?
You have to have I think that it's stay the course, believe in yourself, work hard, and be true to yourself. Because I think that the best reliance is to rely on yourself. If you rely on yourself, you'll find that there's always somebody there. And I believe that diligence and hard work ultimately pays off. It did it for me, and I believe it works for everybody. And don't lose yourself. Don't try too hard to do what people expect you to do, because it's not always right for you. Be your own judge.
Mm-hmm.
It's very important. Judge
Yes.
yourself on what
Yes.
you know, because nobody knows as well as you do.
Because you come in to this world alone and you leave alone. So you always have you. Somebody recently said that, this body that you have, it's always with you. It's always here to support you. You have this body, but so you have to be your own best advocate. And, when you do find that solid sense of yourself and you're your own advocate and you work hard for yourself, it seems like other support systems come into place. So feel like opportunities open up and, people come and support you. And, it's having that inner resilience that,
Right,
opens up doors.
right, right.
Yeah. Yes.
That's very important.
Yes. So in today's world, many people are facing significant personal and political challenges. How do you think your stories and experiences can inspire or guide them finding?
I think that I hope that my stories will teach people two things. One, the history has been often difficult and cruel, and people have overcome it by hard work and by resilience and by being true and honest. And stay true and be honest to yourself and move forward. Don't rely on anybody else. I don't believe in expecting getting something for nothing. Earn it. Because ultimately when you earn it, you respect it more. And I learned it with my children. Strangely enough, I did not believe in giving my children spending money because they should be able to earn it, to know the value of the money, even if it's a small thing. But, I know that people say they learn to manage the money, but it was such a foreign concept to me because we did not have such things in Czechoslovakia. Everything was, difficult to get. And so the parents had the money because they knew how to get what we needed. And so I just think that work hard, don't look right, don't look left, don't look what somebody can do for you. Just do it for yourself. And if you cannot do it yourself, turn around and do something else. Find a different way.
Mm-hmm.
There is, more than one way to achieve what you want to achieve.
That's great. That's really good advice because we see a lot of victim mentality happening in the world and they want handouts and just not taking own personal responsibility. And I'm sure we've all found ourselves wallowing in our own self-pity, but it's until we shake that off and dust ourselves off and stand up straight, put our shoulders back, that's when things begin to happen. So,
it's a good, I think, example is look at athletes.
mm-hmm.
No one can do anything for you. You can whine, you can blame, you can do this, but ultimately When you are at that starting point, it shows what you have done, the work you've done before, and you have done it or you haven't done it. And that's, you may not necessarily win the gold medal, but you can make it into the last few. You can make it into finals. You can make it into the Olympic cut or the world cut or the regional cut. It's not everybody's going to go to Olympics, but if you are a child in a little neighborhood and you want to make it into a little PV team, work hard and you'll get there. And it's a start. It's always rely on yourself as opposed to others. And when you want to blame somebody, look in the mirror.
Yes. 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 We see so much blame. I'm this way because of this or my circumstances. I'm not, can't do that, or my skin color, I can't do that. It's like, look in the mirror. Who is responsible? I'm the only one responsible for myself. It's me. And I always, when you were talking about the athletes, I just think about a runner, on that track. Nobody's going to run that except you. You have to get up and run it if you want to get anywhere.
Right.
Yes. So, just a few more questions before we go. This has been such a, wonderful conversation. I'd like to reflect on your multifaceted career and life experiences. What do you think has been the most surprising or unexpected lesson you've learned along the way?
I think I surprised myself how much I'm actually able to do if I set my mind to it. There were many times when I thought, I just can't do it. I mean, simple thing, always was kind of afraid to sleep alone. And when I first came to England, I was working in a house, and the woman, who was a wonderful person, no reflection on her, but she went to visit her family, and in this big house, suddenly, there was me, 18-year-old, who didn't speak English. In all these rooms, a person who was used to, the entire family lived in one room. We had one room where we lived, one room where we all slept, so really 2-bedroom place. And suddenly there is this house that has 3 floors. They have all these bedrooms, and I'm there all alone. I was absolutely petrified. I was like, I cannot possibly do this. And I was beside myself. And came 10 o'clock, and I realized I have nowhere to go. There's nothing I can do to change the situation. And so I decided, okay, I switched on all the lights, all the radios on, and I was like, okay, I'm going to have a good time. And I was like, okay, if anyone wants to come and join the party. And that's what made me overcome. And then suddenly I wasn't alone in a house. Create your own situation and find a way you can beat whatever it is, whether it's in your head, in your heart, in your bones. Just find a way you can beat it.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot. Your family were used to sleep in the same room. You have this huge house to yourself. You didn't know how to speak English. Like, wow, I can't even imagine that. And then, yeah, you make the best out of
I
your
recognized the
situation.
Beatles songs.
You what?
I recognized all the Beatles songs, and that's what mattered.
Yes, the Beatles. What is one that sticks and resonates with you? What was one that would, what is one or two that were one of your favorites to get you into that space of like, I can do this. I can overcome anything, that made you feel safe?
I think that I like to listen to Sgt. Pepper Lonely's Hearts Club Band just came out. And so I would listen to the entire record. And it depends on a different situation. Different songs would appeal to me. Sometimes I would play sad songs, Day in a Life, and was very important. And when I'm 64, at the time, I thought, wow, 64, that's like,
Right?
yeah. I remember thinking, I can't even imagine Paul McCartney ever being 64. Here he is, still going on a tour at the age of 80. And that's And that would be something that always encouraged me and still does, that if you want to do something, you can do it. Who would have thought that I would write a book? But I went to school, and you want to do something, you do it. And at the time, there was a lot of at 18, who is your model mostly. I wasn't particularly a nerdy girl. And so for me, it was the Beatles, the Bee Gees, and, these songs. And then little later, Bob Dylan and all these people that wrote about stuff that spoke to me, that I could relate to,
Hmm.
Then when they closed the border, I played Help all
Oh
the
my
time.
gosh. Help.
Like I blasted it on, and somehow it gets your fear and frustration out of you. So
Mhm.
I believe that music can help you get over a lot of stuff.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. You can relate to it. Very much so. And you were out of the country in London and doing your modeling career during really when it was the heyday for rock and roll. I always think of Stevie Nicks and Fleetwood Mac. And, this is when rock and roll, people in rock and roll or in music were even bigger than Hollywood figures. So
Yeah.
you got to listen to some of the best music that has ever been produced out there to help you through
Yeah.
growing pains of being
Right.
on your own.
That's well put. Growing pains. It was a growing
Yes.
pain.
Yes. Yes. Well, one or two more questions before we end this amazing conversation. I would love to know, what do you hope readers take away from Encounter with the Future? Are there particular essays or themes that you feel are especially relevant in today's world?
I hope that what people will take away that with that they in life, hard work and belief will always persevere. And I hope that some of the essays will also make them smile. And there are some funny ones. The essay the Encounter with the Future is actually an essay, but I felt that the entire book was about my life encountering a future. And and the essays, is also very important. But I think that today the the essay "When Silence is Not an Option" is, I think, very telling. It's a story when my brother emigrated to England, and he worked for the BBC World Service, and they were broadcasting to the behind Iron Curtain the truth, so that people had something they could believe or compare what they were reading in a local paper or hearing from a local paper. And one day he was hit by a car,
Mm.
and it transpired that it was his colleague was accosted by KGB, and he told them my brother rode his bike at night, and he almost died. But when he recovered, I said, don't go back. Just find a different job. There's no, don't risk your life. And he says to me, that's exactly what they want. No, silence is not an option. And he went back and worked there, then later on worked for Voice of America in US, and ended up teaching in a State Department. And I think that that's a resilience that people should
Mhm.
know, that when it's worth it, you have to continue do what you are doing.
Yes,
That's on a
absolutely.
side. I have a
Yes. That's your next book. That's the one that you're writing right now, right?
no, that's in my book now. That's in a
Oh, it's in
book.
your book now.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's an essay that
Okay.
has been published. There was 10 of the essays in my book have been previously published in magazines and in
Mm,
books, and
okay.
was nominated for Pushcart Prize. And so I made a collection of essays. A lot of people tell me, which made me very happy, that what they like about my book is that, today everybody's busy, and you don't have a time to get into a book that you have to read, you get sucked into. You can read one essay and go back to sleep. or you are waiting
Mm-hmm.
somewhere, you can read one essay, and then you can pick it up again.
Mm-hmm.
I was first unsure whether that will work, but I think it did.
So there's all these essays in your book, and wow, what a fascinating story. Like you have, your brother has. That just shows that the spirit, your brother's spirit, that he got knocked down, he got right back up, and he's fighting for justice. So, yeah, that's just fascinating. And I know I had just mentioned about the other book that you're writing. We had talked about it a little bit. And that leads us to where people can find your book, where people can best get in touch with you, and what is lighting you up right now. It sounds like this new book that you're writing.
Well, yeah. So let me just tell you where they can get the book that is already published.
Okay.
You can get it on Amazon, but you can also go to www.anikapavel.com, and it brings you straight to the website where you can just press the button and order the book. Will bring you right to the Amazon. And I am also writing a next follow-up book, which is actually going to be a fiction. It's called The Lone Sparrow, but it's still in progress, so I don't want to give out too much because it's a fiction.
Sparrow
And it may
fiction.
change.
Okay. So that's got to light you up. Like you said that you were always born to write, and that's why you went to school to learn to write, and you put your first book out. Now you're writing another one. That's amazing. And yeah, this has been such a great conversation. I would love for you to answer the last question that I ask all my audience members. Hello, Nancy. My guests, and that is, what does it mean for you to live with an awakened heart?
It's very important. It means everything. If you don't have awakened heart, you cannot look forward future. You cannot put your right foot again in front of the left one. It's a goal. It's a vision. It's something you treasure. It's very important.
Well, Anika, thank you so much for being our guest today on the Awakened Heart podcast. I'm so inspired by your story and your resilience, and hoping everyone that's listening go pick up her book and follow her and really look in the mirror. And you are the one that is in charge of you, and you can overcome and become anything that you want to be.
Exactly.
Yes. Thank you. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. Good luck.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Awakened Heart podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, share it with a friend. And if you haven't already, head on over to your favorite podcast app to subscribe, rate, and review. If you have any comments, questions, or feedback, you can reach me at theawakenedheartpodcast.com.